There is a memory playing inside your head right now, not from last week, maybe from a decade ago. The exact look someone gave you across a dinner table. The precise tone of a voice during an argument that was never really about what it seemed to be about. The specific weight of a silence that lasted 3 seconds too long. You feel it with the same sharpness as something that happened this morning. The texture of the air, the color of the light. The way your stomach dropped before your brain even had time to form a thought. And yet, you can't remember what you had for lunch yesterday. You forget the name of someone you met 45 minutes ago. You walk into a room and stand there, completely blank, wondering what you came in for. So your whole life you've carried this quiet suspicion that something is wrong with your memory, that your brain is unreliable, maybe even broken. But what if I told you that your brain isn't broken at all? What if the forgetting and the remembering are both part of the same system, a system so sophisticated that neuroscience is only now beginning to fully understand how it works? If we placed your brain inside a scanner right now, a real one, functional MRI, electrodes mapping every signal, we would see something that most neuroscientists wouldn't call a malfunction. They'd call it a priority system, one that operates with a logic so precise, so ancient, that it predates language itself. Today we're running that scan, not on a hypothetical brain, on yours. Because the question isn't why you forget names. The question is why your brain chose to store pain in high definition for decades, and what that choice reveals about the kind of mind you actually have. In our last video, we scanned why your brain drops names, faces, simple facts, the surface layer. Today, the scan goes deeper, past the forgetting, into the region that stores everything you wish you could let go of. And what we find there will change how you see yourself. Let's begin. Your brain has 2 memory systems, and they are in a constant, silent war with each other. The first is called the hippocampus. Think of it as your brain's filing clerk. It processes neutral information, names, dates, grocery lists. The title of that book someone recommended last Tuesday. It's methodical, organized. But here's the thing about this filing clerk. It's slow. It needs repetition to lock something in. It needs focused attention. It needs you to care enough to rehearse the information, to repeat it, to actively decide that this piece of data matters. And there's a cruel twist. The hippocampus is extremely vulnerable to stress. When your system floods with cortisol, which happens every time you feel socially anxious, overstimulated, or emotionally overwhelmed, the hippocampus essentially goes offline. It stops recording. That's why you forget someone's name the moment they say it at a party. Your brain was too busy scanning the room for emotional threats to bother filing a name. The second system is your amygdala, and the amygdala doesn't file anything. It burns. The amygdala is your brain's emotional alarm system. It doesn't care about names or dates or what you ate for lunch. It cares about one thing, survival. And to your amygdala, emotion is survival data. Pain is a warning. Rejection is a threat. Humiliation is a code red signal that must be stored permanently so you never walk into that same danger again. Here's where it gets extraordinary. The amygdala doesn't need repetition. It doesn't need you to rehearse or focus. It has an automatic save function that activates the moment emotional intensity crosses a certain threshold. One single event, one look, one sentence spoken in the wrong tone. And the amygdala presses record, not in standard definition, but in what neuroscientists describe as high-fidelity emotional encoding, full resolution, sound, texture, atmosphere, the exact feeling in your chest. And then cortisol, the same hormone that shuts down your hippocampus, does something paradoxical. It seals that emotional memory in place, permanently. The stress that makes you forget a name is the exact same chemical that makes you remember pain for 30 years. Neuroscientists Call this emotional salience, the brain's built-in algorithm for deciding what matters enough to keep. And the algorithm is brutally simple. If it hurt, it stays. If it was neutral, it can go. This isn't a flaw in the system. This is the system working exactly as it was designed. If this is beginning to change how you understand your own mind, if what you've always called a bad memory is starting to look like something else entirely, subscribe to Quiet Psychology, because what comes next in this scan goes to a place most people are never willing to look now. There's a phenomenon that makes this even more unsettling. In 1977, psychologists Roger Brown and James Kulik identified something they called flashbulb memory. The idea was simple but disturbing. Certain moments are recorded by the brain with photographic precision, not because you tried to remember them, but because the emotional charge was so high that your neural circuitry treated the moment as a permanent record. For decades, researchers assumed flashbulb memories were limited to collective events, national tragedies, historical shocks, moments where the world changed and your brain marked exactly where you were when it happened. But here's the part nobody tells you. Your brain creates private flashbulb memories too, personal ones. Moments that meant nothing to the outside world but meant everything to your nervous system. The exact moment someone said a sentence that quietly changed how you saw yourself. Not a dramatic sentence. Not shouted. Maybe whispered. Maybe said in passing, almost accidentally. But your amygdala heard it, measured the emotional voltage, and pressed the button. A conversation that lasted 10 minutes in real time, but that you've replayed for 10 years. Not because you want to, because your brain classified it as essential data. The silence after a rejection, not what was said, the silence after. Your brain recorded the absence of sound with more precision than most people record entire conversations. The atmosphere of a room where something shifted between you and someone you loved. You can still feel the temperature. You can still see the angle of the light. You remember what you were wearing, where your hands were, the exact second when you realized that nothing would be the same. These aren't just memories. They're neurological monuments. Your brain built them to last because your emotional system decided they contained information too critical to ever lose. And this is where the scan starts to feel personal. Because if you're the kind of person who carries these moments, who replays them involuntarily, who feels them in your body years later, who can describe the emotional weather of a Tuesday afternoon from 2016, then your brain isn't malfunctioning. It's operating at a level of emotional fidelity that most people's systems never reach. The scan is coming back now. And here is the diagnosis. Your brain does not have a memory problem. It has a priority system that is radically different from what the world considers normal. While other brains allocate equal storage space to facts, names, and small talk, yours compresses the trivial and expands the meaningful. It runs a constant, unconscious calculation. Does this carry emotional weight? And if the answer is yes, even slightly yes, it records everything. The sound, the light, the feeling, the meaning beneath the meaning. The clinical term is heightened emotional encoding. But that term doesn't capture what it actually feels like to live inside a brain like this. What it feels like is this. You remember how people made you feel, with a precision that frightens you sometimes. You forget what they said, but you remember what they meant. You lose the name, but you keep the wound, or the warmth, or the exact shade of someone's kindness on a day when you were silently falling apart. The scan shows no anomaly, no deficiency, no malfunction. What it shows is a system that was never designed to remember everything. It was designed to remember what matters, and the cost of that design is real. Let's not look away from it. You carry pain longer than others, not by choice, not because you're dramatic or stuck or unable to move on, but because your brain literally encoded the experience with higher resolution than theirs did. They received a blurry snapshot. You received a full sensory recording. Of course, it takes longer to process. There's more to process. You replay moments involuntarily. A conversation from 3 years ago resurfaces on a Tuesday morning while you're making coffee, and suddenly you're not in your kitchen anymore. You're back in that room, feeling that exact feeling. Your body tenses the same way. Your breathing changes. And the strangest part, the part you've never told anyone, is that you can feel it physically. The memory doesn't just live in your head. It lives in your chest, your stomach, your shoulders, your jaw. Neuroscientists call this somatic memory encoding. Your body stores what your conscious mind would rather forget. And for people with heightened emotional encoding, the body becomes a library of every moment that ever mattered, organized not by date, but by feeling. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that comes with this. Not physical tiredness, something deeper. The fatigue of being someone who registers everything. You walk into a room and you feel the tension between two people who haven't spoken. You notice the smile that doesn't reach someone's eyes. You hear the slight change in someone's voice when they say they're fine, but they're not fine. And your brain files all of it, automatically, without asking your permission. You sometimes wish you could forget the way other people seem to forget. Casually, effortlessly, without the weight. You watch them move past arguments in hours that take you weeks to untangle. You see them laugh at a party where something happened that still sits inside you like a stone. And you wonder, is something wrong with me? Why can't I just let it go? Nothing is wrong with you. You were simply given a recording system that most people weren't, and the playback is louder. But here's where the scan reveals something that changes the entire picture. The gain is not abstract, it is specific. And it shows up most clearly in one place, your relationships. Because the same system that makes you remember pain also makes you remember kindness. The same neural wiring that records a hurtful sentence with surgical precision also records the moment someone showed up for you when no one else did. Remember the friend who texted at exactly the right time, the person who didn't try to fix you, just sat with you, the stranger who said something small that somehow mattered enormously. And here's what people around you rarely say out loud, but always feel. You are the person who makes others feel remembered, not in a performative way, not because you try, but because your brain stored the details that most people's brains discarded. You remember what someone was going through 6 months ago, and you ask about it. You remember the name of their childhood dog. You remember the thing they said once, almost in passing, that revealed something real about who they are. And when you bring it up, casually, naturally, something shifts in their face. Because nobody else remembered that. Nobody else was paying that kind of attention. That is not a common quality. In a world of divided attention and shallow engagement, your depth of memory becomes an act of love that most people have never experienced. The people closest to you, the ones who truly know you, they feel it. They feel that being around you is different, that conversations with you go somewhere real, that your loyalty isn't performative. It's rooted in 1,000 invisible moments you stored, never forgot. You don't love casually. You love with your full archive, every detail, every feeling, every unspoken thing you noticed and kept. That kind of presence is rare, extraordinarily rare, and it comes directly from the same system that makes you hurt longer, feel deeper, and carry more. The diagnosis is clear. There is nothing to fix. There is only something to understand. The cost and the gift are the same mechanism. You cannot have one without the other. The depth that exhausts you is the same depth that makes you irrevocable to the people who truly see you. Here is what I want you to carry with you after this scan. Your brain is not a security camera. It doesn't record everything indiscriminately, hour after hour, in flat, grey, emotionless footage that no one will ever review. Your brain is a photographer, a very particular kind of photographer, the kind who stands in a crowd and doesn't press the shutter for hours, who waits, who watches, who lets 100 ordinary moments pass without lifting the camera. And then, one fraction of a second, the light shifts. Something true flickers across a stranger's face. A feeling moves through the room like a wave that only they can sense. And in that instant, they press the shutter once, one frame, perfectly composed. Every detail preserved, not because they recorded everything, but because they knew exactly what was worth keeping. The names evaporate, the small talk fades, the grocery lists dissolve before you reach the store. But the look in someone's eyes when they told you the truth, that stays. The exact weight of a silence that meant more than any words could carry, that stays. The feeling of being truly seen by another human being, even if it only lasted a few seconds, that stays forever. Maybe that's the most honest way to remember someone, not by their name, but by what they made you feel, not by the facts of their life, but by the moments where something real passed between you. Your brain knows what matters. It always has. Trust the photographer.